Hi guys, welcome back. Today we're going to be focusing in on day 2, graphing cosine curve. When we left, we were talking a lot about the unit circle and how things come about with this unit circle. From that unit circle, you can take all that information to graph both sine and cosine. Again, you can deal with radian or degree. I know most of us are very comfortable with degree, but you guys can go ahead and start using the radian also. But we know that 0 radian, 0 degree, pi over 2 radian, that's 180 over 2 radian. So we know that that's 90. Pi radian is equal to 180 degrees. 3 pi over 2 radian, that's 270. And 2 pi radian is equal to 360 degrees. So when we were looking at the unit circle before we left, you guys can see that this point right here, it's always per 1. It's unit, so the unit is 1. You guys can see that we go over 1, up 0, so this is 1 comma 0. This is over 0, up 1, over negative 1, 0, down 0, over 1. The x value, those are your cosine values. You're going to be starting at 1, 0, negative 1, 0, back to 1. And your sine is the y value. Remember, when we were graphing sine, we started at 0. You went to 1, back to 0, to 1, back to 0. I do want to focus in on, if you forget any of these, let's just say I give you a quiz or any test, and I say, please go ahead and graph the cosine, and you guys forget what the values represent, you guys can just go ahead, make sure you're either in degree or radian, depending. Now you would hit mode, for example, and I'm in degree mode right now. So I would go ahead and hit cosine of 0. I want to see what cosine of 0 equals. And that equals 1. Which clearly indicates right here that it is also 1. Then I want to say, okay, what is the cosine of 90? You guys can see that that's 0, so forth and so on. You can do cosine of 180. That's negative 1, which you can clearly see there. Cosine of 270, back to 0. And then finally, you guys can only guess what the cosine of 360 by looking at that unit circle. That's going to be 1. So if you forget your 5 key points anytime, you guys can always go ahead and just throw that right into your calculator, okay? Okay, so you guys can see that the cosine curve looks a little different than the sine curve. You're going to start at the amplitude and end at the amplitude. You'll hear me say that a lot. Start at amplitude and at the amplitude. So you start at 1, you're going to end at 1. You start at 1, you go down to 0, negative 1, back up to 0, back to 1. Okay, so this right here wants us to graph y equals cosine x, and they want us to graph it from negative 360 to positive 360. So you guys will go ahead and make sure that you focus in on your key points. We always start at 0, 90, 180, 270, and 360. And this we're going to say, okay, we're going to start at the amplitude. We talked a lot where the amplitude was for sine. The amplitude's always out in front. Okay, you'll see that amplitude 1 right out in front here. So we're going to start at 1. You're going to end at 1. And then from there, you're going to go 1 down to 0, negative 1, 0, back to 1. Okay, so we talked about the 5 main key points for sine. These right here are the 5 main key points for cosine. So 1, 2, 3, we're going to mark this off. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, Okay, so we have 90, 180, 270, 360, negative 90, negative 180, negative 270, and negative 360. 1, 2, 3. We're going to start at 1 and negative 1. Okay? So you guys can go ahead and focus in on graphing your 5 key points first. We're at 0, 1, so we start at the amplitude, end at the amplitude. At 90, y equals cosine x would be at 0. At 180, back to negative 1, and then to 0. Okay, then we go down to 0, negative 1, back to 0, to 1. Here, you're going to start at the amplitude. This is one cycle, end at the amplitude, start at the amplitude, end at the amplitude. Again, make sure that you guys have curve length and that you've plotted your 5 key points each and every time. Okay, the domain, those are my x values. We start at negative 360. You're going from left to right, and we end at positive 360. And make sure that you guys have the bracket because 360 is included in that. The range, how low, you're talking your y values. How low can you go to how high, the highest point? We're going from negative 1 to 1. And again, you guys need bracket because those are included. Okay, increase, you guys can see that we have 2 increases. We're going up, up, up here, and up, up, up there. So the increase is from negative 180 to 0. Union, 180 to 360. My decrease, I'm going to be going down, 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 down from that point to that point. And again, from there. So that's negative 360 to negative 180. Union, 0 to 180. Okay, our max, you guys can see our max is the highest point here that we have, and our max is 1. The min is the lowest point. That's going to be negative 1. The equation of the midline, again, we're going to go ahead and focus in on the y. It's from the max and the min, and it's the midway point, and that midway line, and that's y equals 0. We know that this right here is ahoy, so it would be going right through here at this point right here, and that would be our equation of the midline. And the amplitude right here, you guys can see right here, or the highest point, you guys can see that the amplitude would be 1. So the summary of the graph of y equals cosine x, each cycle of the cosine curve can be divided into 4 parts as followed. Its max value occurring at the beginning. We talked about starting at the amplitude, and the minimum is halfway through. Okay, you guys can see, but the amplitude, you're going to start at the amplitude, end at the amplitude, and the middle point is the minimum. Okay, we are now going to go ahead and talk about its 0 occurs halfway between the middle and the end period, and the halfway between the middle and the end of the period. Okay, so we're just saying that right here we're at 0 midway. Okay, both at 90 and at 270. So we're going to go ahead and graph 2 more. We have y equals 3 cosine x from negative 360 to positive 360. The only thing that changes from y equals cosine x to y equals 3 cosine x would be the amplitude. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and create our x values. We always start at 90, 0, 90, 180, 270 to 360. Now we're going to look right here. We always say that we start at the amplitude and end at the amplitude. So we're going to, for our y, we're going to start at 3, we're going to end at 3. We're going to go 3. Our zeros are going to occur halfway between the beginning and the middle. So we're going to go to 0. You're at 3, and then we're going to go to -3, back to 0, and then to 3. And again, you guys can always go ahead. You can hit 3 cosine 90, for example, and you will be at 0. 3 cosine 180, and you'll be at -3. So whenever in doubt, you guys can always go ahead. Whoops, I want to make sure you guys can see that. You can throw those values in your calculator if you ever have a hard time getting your y values. Okay, so we can go ahead and mark this off. We have 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Okay, we have 90, 180, 270, 360, -90, -180, -270, -360. Okay, we're dealing with cosine. So cosine, you're going to start at the amplitude, end at the amplitude, which is 3. Make sure you graph your 5 key points. At 90, we're going to be at 0. At 180, you're going to be at -3, back to 0. Going to go to 0, -3, 0, +3. Okay, and again, when you do this, make sure that you have the curve there. Okay, and we can label this y is equal to 3 cosine x. Our domain, those are the x values. Again, we're going to be going ahead and focusing in on, and again, you guys can see that the domain's always up here. We're going from -360 to +360. Make sure you have that bracket because those are included. The range are my y values from low to high. So we have -3 to +3. It's increasing. You guys can see it's increasing again at 2 spots from here to here, and here to here. So we have an increase from -180 to 0, union 180 to 360. And you can just write and, or you can write both of them down. This just means that they include both of them, the union of the two. And decreasing, you're decreasing from this point here to this, those 2 points. You guys can say that we're decreasing from -360 to -180. And we are also decreasing from 0 to 180. And the midline, we're going ahead and we're going to find the midway point of our y's from 3 to -3, and that is, again, we're writing an equation, y is equal to 0. Okay, and for cosine, we talked about this negative and what the negative means. The negative is a reflection. And just like I showed you guys step by step, I'm going to do that same thing here. Eventually, you guys can just go ahead and reflect it just naturally without showing what this reflection looks like. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to graph y is equal to cosine x. we're going to go ahead and start with our 5 key points, starting at 0, 90, 180, 270, 360. And we start at the amplitude and end at the amplitude. We start at 1, we go to 0, -1, back to 0. And this we're going from 0 to 360. Now, again, that's not what they're asking us to graph. They're asking us to graph that negative, but I'm going to graph this first and show you what that reflection looks like. So 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. So that's 1, -1, 90, 180, 270, 360. Okay, and again, I'm just graphing y is equal to cosine x. So we start at 1. We focus in on our key points, our 5 key points here. Okay, now I'm going to go ahead and show you the reflection. Y equals negative cosine x. We have our x, we still have 0, 90, 180, 270, 360. And we're reflecting it over the x-axis. So again, you're taking this point and flipping this. So this whole thing is going to be flipped. So instead of it looking like this right here, it's going to look like this right here. Instead of looking like a happy face, it's going to kind of look like a sad face here. So we have this 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. This is going to be here. This will be down here. Instead of this being at 1, you're going to flip it, reflect it over the x-axis, and it's going to look like that. Okay, so at 0, it's going to be at -1. Then you're going to go to 0 to +1, back to 0 to -1. And again, if you ever have a hard time with any of those points, you guys can just go ahead and put negative cosine of, let's just say 0. And you guys should get that -1 there for your y value. Okay, so if you ever find it very difficult to go ahead and create your table, throw those calculations into your graphing calculator to get your y values. Okay, your domain. Again, you guys can look up here. That'll always give you your domain. We're going from 0 to 360. Those are my x values that I'm going to be focusing in on. The range is how low to how high, and that's the y values. We're going from -1 to +1. It's increasing from 0 to 180. It's decreasing from 180 to 360. The midline is y is equal to 0. The max is the highest point, which is 1. And the min, that's my lowest point, that'll be at -1. Okay, if you guys have any questions on cosine, please let me know. Have a wonderful day.